a different kind of testimony. We're experiencing God from a place of pain and frustration and annoyance, rather than not having any of that and just experiencing God in bliss.
They said, I know you want
What's going on, my There Soul family? It's Dallas here. Welcome back to the channel. I got a verse for you. Let's jump right into it. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10. So I take pleasure in weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and in difficulties for the sake of Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. We got to get into the context. So this is Paul's second letter to the church at Corinth. Unfortunately, the church at Corinth at the time had been infiltrated by some false apostles, who Paul called super apostles, and some false teachers who were seeking to defile the gospel. And Paul was defending his apostleship and trying to draw the church back to the simplicity of the gospel. So in chapter 12, he's telling a story of these extraordinary revelations. He's telling it in third person, and he's telling them, what happened to this man, which was Paul. He ended up getting a thorn that we don't have any specifics on, but the thorn was given to him so that he would not exalt himself and that he would stay humble. And this thorn, he prayed about it 3 times, and God told him his grace is sufficient. So then we end up at verse 12, where he says, therefore, I will gladly boast in my weaknesses, persecutions, insults, and so on and so on. When I'm weak, then I am strong. That's where we find ourselves today. All right, there are 3 points I want to make. I want to start out with. And the first point is that what Paul is saying is countercultural. All right, so first and foremost, it was countercultural then, it's countercultural now. To boast or to favorably accept a disability or a thorn, something that we prayed about, is not what we usually talk about or say we're glad about. And Paul is doing the opposite. He's saying, I'm glad about it because I'm experiencing God in a way that I wouldn't have experienced him because of this disability, because that's what the thorn was. It was a type of disability that deprived Paul of enjoying life. Right? The second point I want to make is it's a different kind of testimony that he's sharing. It's one thing when we talk about the tangible blessings of God and the peace of God and the joy of God, but it's different when we are told, no, I'm not going to remove this, but I'm going to give you grace. I'm going to give you strength to deal with it. It's a different kind of testimony. We're experiencing God from a place of pain and frustration and annoyance, rather than not having any of that and just experiencing God in bliss. So it's a completely different kind of testimony. The third point I want to make is the language of believers is humility. Paul makes it very clear that this thorn was given to him so that he wouldn't exalt himself because of the extraordinary revelations that was given to him. So God wants to keep believers, he wants to keep us humble. Paul says, I'm going to boast in this because he understood the purpose of it. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, that the language of believers is humility rather than arrogance, because God does not want us to be arrogant. So with all that being said, how does this verse apply to us? And there's one specific thing I want to point out. At the latter part of the verse, it says, when I am weak, then I am strong. It's one thing for us to be countercultural as believers. It's another thing for us to have a different kind of testimony, to where we're testifying about the goodness of God, even in the midst of frustration and pain and difficulties. And it's also one thing for us to walk in humility. But one of the things that's been sticking with me from this verse, and hopefully it speaks to you, is that it's not until we become weak in human strength for the sake of Christ that we actually get to experience the power of God working in us through our weaknesses and through our pain and through our disappointment, anything that would make it challenging to do the will of God, that makes us strong. That it's almost like mind blowing to me. It's like God has this different way of doing things, to where we typically want things to be good, we want to be strong, we want to be healthy, and God is saying, and through this story, it's like when we're weak, when we're at a place where we realize, like, God, I can't do this without you. The only way this is going to happen is with you. Then the power of God works in and through us. And I think that's something that we need to be reminded of. It's not until we become weak, like recognizing that in this flesh, there's no good thing. Having a vision, but being without God, not being devoted, not praying, not asking God for guidance. Like that we're still trying to be strong when we're doing it on our own. But it's when we recognize, like, okay, I need God and I don't want to do it without God, that we're actually able to experience the power of God and experience the strength of God. Listen, I know it's a quick video, as we usually make them quick and short, but I hope I've shared something that speaks to your heart. And maybe there's something you already know, but something you can share with someone else. And if you have something you want to add, we'd love to see you mention it in the comments. And if you have a question, mention that in the comments as well. But as I always say, no matter what you've experienced prior or what you're going through right now, or maybe even in the future, what you always got to know is there's hope.
You better find that rock, stand on it, be